What's up, guys and gals? Chapter 106 review for Record of Ragnarok, also known as Shuumatsu no Valkyrie. And I just have one question for all of you. You can leave me your answer in the comments down below. Did you enjoy this round? Did you like this fight? Was it too long? Was it too short? Was it not the matchup that you were expecting? Did the wrong person win? Let me know. Let me know what you guys thought. Me personally, I thought this was a great round, because of the reasons I've already stated in the previous reviews. But number one, the matchup was good, a little unexpected, but good. The pacing of it was as good as could be expected, considering that finally, like I've been wanting since round one, which people like to, they like to crap on for whatever reason. No, this round, short. Not every fight needs to be a balls-out, toe-to-toe, going all 10 rounds Rocky Balboa. Not every one. And people have also told me, as a result of that stance, is that, well, nobody wants to take that one character that they're looking forward to, and for them to only have, 5 chapters, and then the character they were most looking forward to doesn't get to shine much. And I get that. I understand from a writing crutch perspective that is a thing. When you've hyped up this list of fantastical gods and historical figures and stuff like that, you want them all to have their 5 minutes of fame, as it were. But this round, I thought, already showcased us, because we've been introduced to Loki since the beginning of the series. So we didn't need much when it came to Loki. We got that little bit of backstory, which some people are sort of humming and hawing, his whole falling in love with Brunhilde sort of idea. But for the most part, I think that's okay. And so we didn't need to spend a whole lot of time there. And Simon, very simple motivation as to why he fights and what his personality was. And it's great. So in this chapter, and the reason I say all this is because, of course, we're sort of recapping how we all feel about the round right now here at the beginning, because this is, of course, is one of the in-between chapters. And honestly, it's mostly the afterthoughts of the characters that we know and that we're following along with. There's nothing super major that happens here. You can skim through it pretty easily. The first few pages is that Simon has won. The crowd cheers. Everyone's all good about it. But we think that maybe has Simon actually succumbed to his injuries, where he gave up, his organs to fire these god shots and stuff like that, which once again, I thought also was a great idea, having that ability, because it was like a one-shot kill for a sniper. That's exactly like the motif of, one shot and this is over. This is not going to be a prolonged, as I said, a slugfest like a Rocky fight. No, this is going to be, if he gets one good shot off, that's going to end the match. No matter which god he was up against, for the most part, I would argue, is that's the whole purpose of a sniper. That's the whole point of the character. So it just made sense. And the fact is, well, for to one-shot a god, you got to have, your recoil damage, like Pokemon. So we get the little dog here. I forget what the dog's name is. He rushes up and he's like, oh, is he all right? And then boom, boom, boom. Yes, he's totally fine. So I'm sure he's not totally fine, but, he's still alive. So the winner is alive and everything's all good. I'm sure he's going to be patched up and he's going to be in like one of those metamorphosis jars like Shiva had, sort of idea. Remember when Shiva had 3 arms missing and there were like these balls, like Dragon Ball Z sort of, we'll put you in a capsule, you'll be fine, you know what I mean? Like, answer, Piccolo cells. In Dragon Ball, it's Piccolo cells. In Naruto, it's Hashirama cells. In Bleach, well, they have Orihime. I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, so I'm unsure how to feel about the next scene with Ares. So, of course, Zeus, Hermes, and Ares are our main commentators for the most part of this series, right? On the god side of things, anyways. Of course, we have Brunhilde with, right now, Buddha, but before it's usually Gol. Right now, it's Ares, Hermes, and Zeus on the god side. Now, Ares doesn't want to believe that Loki... Now, they didn't have as many interactions as a lot of characters did, so this scene, to me, feels a little hollow. I got the anger about Heracles and stuff, 2 warriors, that kind of idea. As far as Loki goes, I guess he's just feeling the effects of losing just gods that he's acquainted with in general at this point, because he's expecting Loki to, this is another one of Loki's tricks. He's going to be right back sort of deal. You know what it got? For whatever reason, this gave me very Sirius Black vibes from Order of the Phoenix in the Harry Potter universe. I don't know why. It just felt like that. Like, the disbelief. It's like, no. He's not dead. He's just going to go, ha, I'm a prankster sort of idea. Maybe because he was a prankster in the Harry Potter verse and stuff, you know. But I do not know, like, why that initially, it just feels sort of the same thing, like the sense of denial. It's that, oh, well, he's a trickster, he's pulling a prank, that was just another copy, I'm sure he's gonna, I just forfeited, but I'm right here, don't worry about it, you know, I'm all good, but I gave up, or something, you know. Ares is in this process of denial, and he just can't accept it. It goes very quickly, though. Of course, he grabs Hermes, as always, and... You know, and Ares even states, he was never my friend, but if you're gone, I'll be lonely, you dumbass. Now, they're all sort of feeling the effects of losing a major god like Loki. As I said, it just feels a little unearned from Ares, because Ares even states here, we know that he's the guy who wears his heart on his sleeve sort of idea, but for me, he even states, he was never my friend, and we didn't get that many interactions with them, so this scene feels a little... I guess we need to see some level of emotion that Loki's gone, you know, but we already get that from Brunhilde. You know, you're not going to get it from Odin, you know, and we get actually a really nice scene, a much better scene. I just feel like this scene was almost, I won't say a waste of pages, but felt unearned, because they spend more time with that, you know, and then we see the one-shots, like, this is what we should have seen with Ares, realistically, was just a page like this, like Aphrodite, like, sort of like, Shiva just being like, you know, damn. Same with Apollo thinking that the fight was beautiful as he recovers and stuff like that. Like, all these... But we can get all the reactions on how each character feels about this without creating this pseudo-familiarity that Ares didn't really have, as far as I was aware. So, anyways, that's just how I felt about it. And then we get Jack here, and we'll talk about the better character to react to this, because we know the ones who are going to be most affected by Loki's death are going to be, of course, Brunhilde, obviously the object of his affections, and it would be Odin and Thor, the people from his own pantheon. But Odin, as we know, is not even the real Odin, and we doubt that the real Odin would probably react much to this at all, other than in just straight up anger anyways. So there's only one other character. Thankfully, we do not forget that, and we will get to that. I do like Jack being the commentator here, though. I've been enjoying Jack's interactions ever since, like, the last round and now this round and stuff. Like, we're getting more of Jack just being like, I'm gonna be the narrator for what went down and what happened, and the recap guy. I like that because Jack is definitely suited for the role, because he's almost objective in a sense, because he's hated by humanity, but he fought for them, and of course the whole Heracles thing. So I don't mind his position in this series, as, you know, since round 4. And he just goes through it and explains everything that happened, and he recaps everything. We already know what happened, so that's fine, and it makes enough sense. Now, this is where, is it Halak? The Valkyrie sister that's chilling with Jack is basically just saying, like, look, here's, I just want to know a few things, like, how did this happen? Like, how did Simon know this, that, and the other thing? And Jack just points out, well, the wildlife, he's so familiar with being in the woods and the wilderness and stuff, he can tell that the wildlife, and like I thought before, is that when he kills someone, they call it the pain of the heart, but it's basically like when you have killed so many people, you know when you've fired a killing shot versus you've missed, or you hit a defense, you hit an armor, you hit a shield. You know the difference between the feeling of taking a life and not taking a life. And Simon has that sixth sense, or whatever you want to call it, the pain of the heart. So he knew instinctively every time he fired whether he hit Loki or not, and whether it felt correct. So that's what I summarized last chapter review, and it makes sense here, and they're explaining it here, so that's all good. And then he goes on to say that, what about the bird? And this is something I didn't actually think about, and I like that they addressed it, though, because had I thought about it, it would have been like, how did he know that? And it's brought up like, how did he know that the bird was not a real bird because he instinctively pointed the rifle right up to the sky at the bird before Loki had transformed from the bird into Loki. So how did he know? Because he was too fast to make that reaction. And it's simply stated that he's so used to this environment, and this was to Loki's deficit, in the sense that he didn't act like a bird. That bird is acting strangely, so it can't be a real bird. It's as simple as that, and you know what? I buy that. I buy these abilities from Simon because these are abilities that normal, well, not normal, abnormal, but human beings would just obtain. This isn't some superpower or something that's unbelievable. You know what I mean? You take someone who has been living in the woods and is sort of a one with nature and very, and hunters and soldiers and stuff like that. You take a sniper who's also a hunter for the last 30 years and, one of the greatest in the world, the greatest sniper according to most, he's going to know the difference, those tiny little things. And even Loki's not going to be able to, change that. So I like this explanation. I think it's really good. And especially the end part where she just simply asks, which confirms what I said. Because I like the way they describe it here. This is a translation, of course, from the Japanese. But I like the way they describe it here. Is that he's like, what color was Lord Loki? I have to ask. Because when Loki first met, all of us sisters knew. She's implying that they all knew that he was infatuated with their elder sister Brunhilde. They all knew it. They kept quiet about it, but they all knew that Loki had only changed from this hardened, don't look at him the wrong way or he'll eliminate you, to this prankster god for her. They knew that he was in love with, their sister. So she just asked, what color at the end was he? She's worried, was he hateful? Was he malice or whatever like that? And Jack just simply says, he was truly beautiful because it was the color of the purest, most unadulterated, insane love. I like the point of saying insane love because it was still love. And I'm not going to make this argument again. We've talked about it in previous reviews and stuff when it came to Loki and how his love became more of an obsession and stuff. But it's, paper thin line, the difference between pure love and, a toxic love or a possessive love or an obsession, So the description of what Loki was, but it was still love at the end of the day. It cannot be described as anything else, and I like that. It's not the same as Heracles' color, but it was a positive energy. It was a positive color. It wasn't a negative color from Jack's perspective. So I like that. So that's basically the big part of the chapter that really, to discuss and talk about. As I said, the only other person who we should be seeing the reaction from, who is Thor, and I like this, Mjolnir is the one that's actually reacting. We see Thor, he's being his usual stoic self, and he's just like, and he's just watching the screen, because he's been watching this whole time, and he got to fight his fight and stuff like that, and we haven't seen much of Thor really at all, and here we see that the hammer, Mjolnir, is reacting, and he goes, I see you too. And then he holds the hammer because the hammer's starting to pulse and sort of shake on the ground. So he steadies it and he says, you too. Are you sad? And he says this with this very, this look that Thor doesn't usually get, this almost smile. He's like Loki died. This implies that Thor is a lot wiser and knows a lot more. I'm going to assume that Thor also knows that his brother died happy in a sense. And Thor never disliked Loki or anything like that, because he implies that Mjolnir is sad to see the loss of his brother. And Thor says, you too. Are you sad? So even though we don't see the expression on Thor's face exactly, we get this uncharacteristic expression of him closing his eyes and smiling at the hammer, acknowledging that they're both sad to lose Loki. I like that. It's subtle, it's simple, you can read a lot into it, but it's only a page. It's only a damn page. A page and a half at best. And that's all we needed. Ares got more time than Thor did, and I find that very strange. I know, as I said, Ares is one of the main commentators and stuff from the god side, but, that's That felt unearned. This was nice. This was good writing, as far as And then we jump off to there's Brunhilde and Buddha, of course, like that. And Buddha's just talking his stuff, and he's just, he's bringing up everything we already know. And I like what he says at the very end, because Brunhilde, we don't see her expression. She, of course, walks away. She's, crying and unhappy. I like Buddha saying that, man, all of you, your puberty is going haywire right now. Yeah, like Buddha just is like this between Odin, Loki, Beelzebub, Brunhilde, Siegfried, he's like, oh, and then of course the opponent he faced, I find it absolutely hilarious that he's just like, all of you children, would you go through puberty already? You're all like 1,000 or 5,000 years old at this point. Why are you all still in puberty? This is not high school, So I like that line, because it really is. It's drama. It's high school drama, just dialed up to not even 11. It broke the amplifier sort of idea, right? So I like that. And I love this shot of when Brunhilde now walks down, of course, to the Hall of Heroes. And it showcases all the lost on both the god and... Now, my problem with this is, though, there's a slight problem here. So... originally, remember that she said that she was going to house with the other two losses, with like Lubu, and like we never saw her do this for Poseidon, because Poseidon kind of evil dude. But this is sort of retconning, I think, how if I'm correct about this, correct me if I'm wrong, but she was doing a Hall of Heroes for the fallen ones. It was Hermes who was writing songs and ballads for each of the fallen, regardless whether they were on humanity's side or if they were on the god's side. Brunhilde was only putting in the Hall of Lost Heroes like Lubu and Adam and stuff like that, not Poseidon. Though she made one specifically for Heracles, because Heracles, of course, fought for the gods but for humanity in his own way, and said, I'm sorry, dear brother, I'll apologize as much as I have to, but I don't think you'll hate me for housing you with humanity's heroes. He'd be honored to be standing a gravestone, a tombstone with them sort of idea, a memorial. She apologized and said, is it all right that you're here with them sort of idea? That implies that only Heracles, there shouldn't be this lineup here. But there is. Not that I mind it necessarily, because it's a very cool shot. We're seeing all the lost fighters on both sides. We see Poseidon, Lubu, Hades, Susanoo, Raymond. We see everybody, right? But that's weird. And then she goes and gets Loki. Now, I could see her maybe housing Loki also with this group, but now it's implying that she's housing anybody lost on both the god and the heroes, humanity side. I don't remember that being a thing, because that was the whole thing. She was only fighting for the humanity side, and Heracles specifically was going to be the only god or demigod that was going to be housed with the fallen side of humanity, not with the god side. So, beautiful shot, but doesn't make sense considering the beginning of the series. But maybe this is a different... I don't know. It'd be weird if she had two memorials. 2 rooms that she goes down. I don't know. Anyways, so she talks about Loki and stuff like that, and she, says I understand everything that you did for the sake of your love. You became a clown just to see me smile, sort of idea. You never hesitated for a second, and like Lord Buddha said, you and I are the same, which is why I won't be apologizing and stuff like that, because they both fought for their love, sort of idea. Loki did what he thought was best. Brunhilde is doing what she thought was best, and both were for the sake of love, right or wrong decisions. And so Brunhilde's still crying because she, even though she was never in love with Loki, she felt familiarity. She felt affection for him. Had Siegfried never shown up, maybe they would have gotten together in another time, in another place. Maybe it could have happened, you know what I mean? And I think she acknowledges that, and that's why she's doing what she's doing. We jump back to Goal and Siegfried and stuff like that. Siegfried saying that though he of course, hates what Loki did to him. He never hated Loki as a person necessarily. You know, like, it's like, back then I did despise him. But however, I wouldn't wish, you know, that fate on anyone to never have the possibility of returning ever. Because if you go to Nifel, you're gone. You're erased from existence. You're in the void. There is no coming back from this. It's not Helheim. It's not Niflheim. It's not anybody. It's nothingness sort of idea, right? So yeah. So Siegfried, while saying initially, of course, I hated him and I despised him and hated what he did, you know, I understand him a little bit better, at least, and stuff like that. Now, of course, we're down to the final fights, right? And so they're doing their discussion about, okay, we're down to the wire here. Let's go. End of chapter. Of course, Odin, not Odin, shows up to basically said, "What is your goal, Brunhilde?" And he's cracking the whole hallway, and it's big, intimidating, like spiritual pressure from Bleach, like Kenpachi, you know, on everybody. And then she's just like, "Lord Odin," and it's very reminiscent of spiritual pressure in the Soul Society arc. You know, cracking the pillars and, you know, forcing gravitational pulls and stuff. And simply says, like, you know, it's like, "What is your goal, Brunhilde?" And Brunhilde's like, "Obviously, it is to save humanity." Now, of course, Buddha knows the real reason is to try to save Siegfried. Now, she doesn't come out and say this, but she says an alternative, which is still, it's not a third goal, it's still the same goal, because it'll result in Siegfried's, I assume, release, is, you know, "I know what your true goal is." And she smirks up and she manages to stand up to the pressure, look him dead in the eye at the end of the chapter and say, "Obviously, my other goal, my true goal, is to kill you." Dun dun dun. End of chapter. So, all right. We're into this. We're into this pretty hardcore. I like this chapter. As I said, the only thing that felt out of place was Ares. Ares got more time than Thor did. Not that, of course, Thor is a man of few words. I wouldn't change the Thor scene. I just wouldn't give Ares more pages than Thor to, you know, mourn Loki. I found that part just to be a little out of place. Just a wee bit. But other than that, I like the chapter. And as I said, if you break each part down, there's plenty to discuss. But I think I discussed it all, and we're over 20 minutes, so yeah, you know, usually a monthly release, you got enough stuff to talk about for 20 minutes, half an hour, and I don't think I missed anything. You know, we talked about the round at the beginning of the review, right? So, you know, and as I said, I asked the question, and I still want the answer. What do you guys think? Not just of the chapter, but of the round. Was it too fast for you? Even though I think that that's something that I've been wanting for 3 or 4 rounds now, I needed another, like, guess what? They're not all going to be extreme high-def fights. Somebody is going to dominate. You know, the matchups aren't always perfect. Just look at any sport. You know what I mean? You don't always have, you know, the Lakers versus the Celtics, or, you know, like you just don't always have 2 juggernauts going head-to-head. Sometimes you have the worst team in the league versus another team. It's going to be 40-0 before, you know, the first minute of the game, you know what I mean? So I think that that's much more realistic, and Simon never seemed to sweat, though Loki obviously did have an opportunity to win here and stuff, but it was always going to be who was going to get the first real strike. This was all down to that, so it was all prep work. I thought the fight was really good, and one of the better later rounds, I would argue. I'm not the biggest fan of Loki, but as a character, he works here. As an antagonist, he works here. And Simon works as sort of the silent man of few words and did what he was asked, you know what I mean? I like that too. So anyways, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. We'll see you guys back here for chapter 107 of Record of Ragnarok, also known as Shuumatsu no Valkyrie. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. Have a good one, everyone. Sayonara.